Hello and welcome once more to Conscious TV. My name is Iain and today our guest is Byron Katie. Hi Katie.
Hello Iain.
And Katie is very well known for the work. She's written many books. I have a couple here. There's Loving What Is, 4 Questions That Can Change Your Life. And there's a workbook called The Work of Byron Katie. And there's many more, so you can just check out what's available and what you feel drawn to. So there's a quote, Katie, I picked out of one of your books, which goes, it's very short, I am the one who knew nothing, one who awoke within the ancient wisdom. What does that mean to you now?
Well, what does it mean to me now? It sounds like I thought I knew something when it came out of my mouth, you know, ancient wisdom. I don't think there is any ancient wisdom, and through inquiry, you know, just to end every thought in a question mark, every assumption in a question mark. Ancient wisdom can't live very long. So it leaves the mind in that don't know place that is just so vast and open and teachable, and less I know.
So I know when you were quite young, from things I've read, that you actually had some quite deep experiences. As one time you were 3 years old and you were sitting on the curb and you felt that all you could see was all that existed. Yes,
and I would love to believe that every child, that everyone that gets still enough could identify that time. It was, you know, just being still and witnessing, knowing that if I can't see it, it doesn't exist. And really, you know, looking back at that, or just from right here, right now, not knowing what anything is left, you know, basically without comparison and a happy life in every moment.
It's as if children do have this inherent wisdom within them, and somehow as they get older and more conditioning creeps in, then that gets distorted, doesn't it?
Yes, they become believers. And the life of a believer is very difficult, very confusing. Like some say it's black, some say it's white, some say up, down. You know, imagine for a child a clean slate, how confusing that must be. You know, you don't look down and say up, or people say you did it wrong, and you don't know what wrong is. So now I am the one, you know, my identity develops out of that. Who am I? Well, I'm the one that does it wrong. And so I'm the one that looks down, and the one that did it wrong, and that's supposed to be up, or is it down? Left, right. You know, it's very confusing for the believer. You know, we feel that we never get it right, and we're fairly accurate in that. It's all a projection of mind. So of course we're confused. We even think that that there's a right way. And the way is always right. But what we're believing about the way, you know, that could use a little work. So that's what I do. I bring inquiry, the availability of inquiry to the world. And it's good for some, but it certainly takes a lot of silence, a lot of stillness, a lot of contemplation to sit in a question such as, is it true? After you've identified some assumption that is causing great disruption.
It's as if we have to go back in one way to being an innocent child. We have to rediscover that, because there's no way out. We have our growing up, and we get all the human conditioning from our culture and from our parents, and that's the way it is, isn't it?
You know, it certainly was that way for me, and then when inquiry found me, it's like I just went back to where I came from, just one assumption, one concept, one belief at a time. And as identity fell away, it's certainly, I found the cause of and for a lot of laughter. It's like I turned out to be the joke itself.
Just to take just briefly your story in quotes in sequence. So You had a not particularly happy childhood, and then you got married to your first husband. You obviously had somewhere inside you there was a real strong drive in the world, because you became with your husband very successful quite quickly. And there's a quote I pulled out of one of the books, like, money gushed up like oil. I'm not saying that's your quote, but someone said that about you. You became rich and powerful. You were living actually the American dream, but on the outside it was the American dream. On the inside you were hurting, weren't you?
Yes, yes. And you know, if you have, let's say, financial security, and it was not like vastly wealthy. You know, when you live in a small town, it doesn't take much to be wealthy, because that's what you're comparing it to. So it wasn't like major wealth. It was just comparative wealth. But it's, you know, that's supposed to make you happy, but it doesn't change what you're thinking and believing. So rich or poor, we're attached to what we're thinking and believing until that's questioned. I don't know another way of waking up to the dream world that we're living in, this, you know, this world of suffering, other than inquiry, which I did not have access to growing up. A thought would happen, I would believe it, and I was identified, and, you know, and I would tell you that's true, and then defend it. And of course, you know, I've discovered that defense is the first act of war. So I was very confused, had a lot to unlearn.
But it's interesting, you had this drive, and not everybody has that. You had the drive somehow to find, to complete, and to discover, and that drive originally went on the outside because that's all you knew, and that's what society was doing.
Yes, it's as though I just knew what to do. It was clear.
Yes.
I just knew what to do, and now I know. You know, there's a term I love. I'm not the doer, and so what I was believing was interfering with what was actually going on. And today, you know, more awake to what's really going on without the addition of my story. What an amazing apparent existence. What play, this imagined world, just to, you know, this world where there's absolutely no cause for suffering, no cause for pain. It's a beautiful world to wake up to.
So you became very overweight, alcoholic, smoking, everything was going to the extreme. So something kind of had to give, and it could have been,
yeah,
I guess.
It's like I played that one out.
Yeah, you did. That's what
it was. That was my path, and it was a radical path. And I know I had dinner with Eckhart and Kim a few nights ago, and we were. At one point we were laughing, and at one point he said, "Well, Katie's way is very radical."
But it was also total.
With a great smile on that sweet face of his.
You know, I'm trying to make this point because I know there's a lot of people who watch Conscious TV who, okay, they're lost in their own way. They're trying to find a way, and there's something about this totality which I loved about your quotes story. And as we said, you did it completely, and then everything kind of crashed, and you left your husband. You lost some money, you made some more money, and then you were so desperate you ended up in what's in America called a halfway house.
Yes.
It's not a term we use in Europe.
Yes.
And there you didn't even feel you were worthy to lie on a bed.
Yes.
So you were lying on the floor, and then what happened? You were lying on the floor one day. Just talk me through what happened.
Well, asleep on the floor, I woke up one morning. You know, I slept next to my bed because Again, I didn't believe I was worthy of even that. But sleeping on the floor, I woke up just like we all do every morning. But I woke up in two ways. I woke up from the sleep of the night, and I woke up into another world. And, you know, it was quite radical. Prior to that, I believed that you had to die of the physical body to escape this this hell as I perceived life to be. And it wasn't true. There's another way, you know. And for me, it just turned out to be so simple. What I saw that was so valuable, what really matters from that experience is I saw in that moment that when I believed my thoughts, I suffered. And when I didn't believe my thoughts, I didn't suffer. And I've come to see that this is true for every human being. Now, it's all the darkness in that moment was gone. And I could see in that moment, in that unidentified I moment, I could see that the moment, I'll say it this way, the moment that the mind hit, it had lost the ability to believe, but it saw in that moment that the mind hit that what it believed it saw. So it was the ultimate creator of all. And then this laughter it's as though it just burst into life, and that was its first sound. And so I've experienced a lot of laughter since. That is, you know, I can look so serious, but that laughter, it doesn't move. It's just, it is the most brilliant thing to say, to hear someone say, for example, the sky is blue, and I can't laugh and say, are you still believing that, or are you just being funny? It's just that silent humor that's going on all the time, that laughter, and to have lost the ability to believe, and in that grace of always being that. I am that, I am that, I am not, I am not.
It seems to me the breakthrough was, and this is using your words at the time, from what I've read anyway, that, okay, a cockroach goes over your foot, and there's a recognition that comes from somewhere that all is one. Yeah. Now that, I presume, didn't come from the mind, or not directly from the mind,
well,
but it went via the mind.
There's nothing that does not come from the mind. No story, no world. And how else are we going to tell it? And so, of course, we do the best we can. But yes, in that, as I lay on the floor, actually a cockroach crawled over my foot, and I opened my eyes, and in place of all that darkness was a joy, and I've always had difficulty speaking to that. I think it's better lived.
Yeah, but okay, what interests me is, and it's something that I think I can personalize to a degree, haven't had a cockroach, but it's like there's the realization that everything is one. My language is more the ground of being rather than everything is one. And then the mind comes in, and when I say the mind, I mean the conditioned human mind, and it creates the separation. So let's look at yours as symbolic rather than you personally, Katie. So you're lying there, you have the cockroach, realization comes from nowhere, everything is one. And then the mind comes in and says, well, that's a cockroach, that's my foot, this is my body. And that, in a way, and I think you identify this in the work, that's the beginning of the disease. That's the beginning of separation, moving away from the knowing that everything is one.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So, I'm going to go a little bit on this, and then we'll come much more broader and much more onto the work. But what I liked about your story was that you had to learn humanness. You had to learn to communicate. And I wondered, do you remember any of this process? Is it so far in the past now? How you it's like there was seems to me a learning of a new way of being a human being.
Yes, because it was, you know, how do you identify when you don't? How do you be when you're not? And for example, maybe I would be walking, and for an agoraphobic, that's a lot. And you know, years locked in my own world and bedroom and home, so to speak, very difficult to leave. And very fearful, but then this experience, and then there's this apparent woman walking, and maybe I would maybe walk into someone's house knowing that it was mine because no one had told me that's not what we do here. And so I had this knowing, this understanding of no separation. So maybe I would sit down in their living room, and the family would come by and say, hello, how are you? And the warmest, friendliest world. And then they would start figuring out that no one knew me in the family, that I had, in fact, not been invited in by anyone that they could identify. And then they would begin to teach me, like, this is our home. Well, that's separation.
Yes.
And then they would begin to teach me who they are. Can we help you? How can, what can we do for you? Would you like a glass of water? What is your address? These moments you learn you have an address, that you're in the wrong home. That's huge separation. But I did meet the friendly universe starting this time from a child, because I had inquiry to show me the way. So in my original experience, everything turned out not to be true, and that hasn't changed. For example, maybe I would find myself in maybe a mall or a marketplace, and I would be just sobbing with just the miracle of it all, just this miracle. And maybe I would sit down against the wall, just out of people's way, and people would stop and say, may I help you? The same thing again, it's the heart, and
yes.
Would you like a tissue? Can I help you? Is there anywhere is there someone I could call? That's what we hold in common specifically. Then if someone says, I'm going to kill you, isn't that a blessing as well? Once you understand that you cannot die, that you have to be born, you have to exist before you can die. There's a little confusion here on the planet, but nothing inquiry can take care of if the mind is open to inquiry. And we're going to some amazing experiences here on this planet. I'll say it that way. And we could use a little enlightenment, a little inquiry. Fear is the opposite of our true nature. And for me, true nature is basically, I love, I care. How can I help? That is standard, just standard, the standard voice of the heart. And when the heart and the mind are same, that's the end of the duality that you spoke to earlier. There is no longer duality. There is no apparent negative in that world. It cannot, it's meant to be humorous, nothing more than that. But that is once something that's seen through. Only love.
Did your mind and the old conditioning try to get back at all? Because the way you're talking, it's not only your realization of who you truly are, but there's also within that there's inherent trust. And I'm wondering, did the old try and get back, the old doubting, say, what I'm doing may be dangerous?
Through the world. Through the world. For example, someone might say, you're crazy, you're dangerous, and it would excite me. It's like, my goodness, where am I crazy? And where am I dangerous? And then just get still. And then through those images and concepts, you're shown. You're shown. And if it's not kind, it is dangerous. In other words, what I mean by that is there's this movement toward what is not our nature. Other than that, what is dangerous? Nothing. But you feel it. Everyone feels it. That's what stress is. That's what anger is. That's what anything that would go against our nature. This caring heart, the heart. That's what anything that would argue with that kind of beauty is going to feel like stress. And we have names for it, like anger, hurt, sorrow, and resentment, anything like that. But those are just emotions to let us know, don't look out there to change the world, to be more comfortable. Look here, identify what you're believing and put it to the test, put it through inquiry, and then you may come out a little lighter, or possibly a lot lighter.
So your doubt completely went, because a lot of this comes from doubt. Was that totally eliminated?
It's eliminated through inquiry. A child can see that when their mind is open to questioning.
When you, I know from what I've read, with the work, you understood the importance of the work, because it was partly when you were in the halfway house, you did some healing to people, and you saw they reverted back, because psychologically, mind-wise, they still had the same program, and you saw the work as a very important tool for them changing the mind.
Yes, to break the spell.
Yes.
If someone says, don't believe this, okay, I'll try, I won't believe it. So then you have to go into denial not to believe it, because you still believe it. So inquiry is the only thing I know to break the spell. We can see something very beautiful, but the mind, it won't last long. To the unquestioned mind, it will tear it to shreds. It will do whatever it takes to keep its false identity. That's how it works. It says, for me, every thought is the beloved. For me, every thought is like a child that hasn't been met with understanding, met by the heart yet. So maybe it says something terrible is going to happen. If you just put that through inquiry, that is a child's mind that says there's anything here that would harm. And that's a little radical, as I've been told, that's a little radical, but not in my world. It's not radical at all. We could, look at us. We could use a little help with the mind. It seems to be a runaway train, and we only need look at let's say, the outside world and the wars in the world and the famine and the fear to know that somehow the one mind could use a little help. With every apparent person in the world, if you put all of those bodies together, actually, just drop the bodies, you have one mind, one schizophrenic mind. So when there's one, let's say, enlightened mind, it begins to shift everything, and it just begins, and there are a lot of wonderful minds, as I see something like your program, waking up to a little reality.
Is there something in you that has consciously maintained this vigilance of inquiry, or is it such a natural, automatic process now?
It's is it true has just come alive. It's a part of mind. That mind says, let's say, using that prior example, something terrible is going to happen. And then over here, there is complete wisdom. No one holds more than another. It's total, it's complete. But it's the same mind, and then let's say in the center, is it true? Like something terrible is going to happen. And if that same mind asks, is it true, and just waits, then this will penetrate. Enlighten it, wake it up. But that's what's so important about stillness, about just being still and listening, and to contemplate on, is it true? It's very powerful. It ends internal Velcro. And that is true attachment. Attachment falls away. Mind is safe, to use your word, in releasing what it believed. And in that fourth question, who would I be without it? You begin to notice that you're okay. And there's no moment that you have never been, until finally you begin to understand that not this. There's nothing to protect here, nothing to secure, to make comfortable, or to move into a pleasurable situation, a fearful situation.
You see, I would challenge you there, because I don't know whether it's an understanding or a grace of God. It's as if on the level of working on the mind and working with your questions, yes, the layers get peeled away, automatically they fall away. And yes, somehow there's a letting go that happens.
Yes.
But like when you woke up, most people, when they really wake up to who they truly are, there's something quantum. It's like God, quote, smiled for a moment.
Yes.
And you can do all this work and somehow, and it improves your life. It takes away a lot of the automatic programs, but something doesn't necessarily happen automatically. Would you say I'm being cynical there? Or?
No, no. It just certainly seems that way. I see every mind as the enlightened mind, and I see the mind very confused as it identifies, I stay identified as something that it's not, and it has to be completely vigilant. And again, the only thing I know to break the spell is just to get still and identify what mind is believing in the moment, and then put it through inquiry, and then see what's left. Because I work with, there are millions of people in inquiry, and as well as in this inquiry, these 4 questions, whose lives are shifting. And for me, that's waking up to reality. It's the mind's ability through inquiry eventually to, again, use your word, just to trust that I am not this, and without this, there's nothing to lose. It is just mind's play, and that's a beautiful thing.
But you see, does it really work that way? That I am not this? Because again, my experience is that actually this is something completely different. I can never say I'm not this. Something happens when you realize that, in my words, I'm the ground of being, not this. And it's the I, it becomes this narrow circle sometimes in my life, the I, and people maybe call it the observer, the witness, but the observer and the witness is never going to let go, because it can't, because it's the one it's trying to let go of. Somehow something happens and I am this, which is completely different.
Yeah, I can see it, but I am this, once it's questioned, you can't have that either. Mind cannot exist as something, because it is nothing. If you take all the thoughts that have ever been thought and you put them in a big box in front of you and you look in there, there's nothing.
So
Mind cannot ever be.
So the questions ultimately destroy the mind, or destroy the thinking, the irrational thinking process of the mind.
They would say that it's something. And once it can no longer believe it, for example, most people have had thoughts like these. I want my body to be young and beautiful and healthy and flexible, and you just feel that, and they take it to the gym, okay? Or I want my mind, my thinking, my thoughts to be young and healthy and beautiful and flexible. Which would you choose? Everyone chooses the mind.
Yes.
Because if you were paralyzed from head to toe and you love everything you think, where's the problem? There isn't one. So that's another way of saying I am not this. Someone says I'm going to kill you, find it hilarious. I mean, what are they going to kill?
And that happened to you. I was listening to a CD, which is one of your books, I think, and someone, I think they held a gun to you, is that right?
Yes, he said he was going to kill me, and he pulled the hammer back, and I looked into his eyes, and I thought, I'd want to kill me too. If I believed what he believed, how could I not? So he's a believer. He's not guilty. I mean, we can't stop ourselves from believing what we're believing. That's what inquiry is for. In time, it enlightens the mind, or not, depending on how open the mind is, because even that is a state of grace. But he said he was going, and I thought, he will or he won't, don't know. And in the meantime, I could see the sky and the clouds and the moon.
Did your heart beat faster? Did anything happen at all?
No. Everything is what it is.
Yeah.
And it is so entirely beautiful. I mean, what is going to die? And if I'm dead, how would I know it? I mean, There's nothing born to die. It is just, and my thought was, I hope, as I looked into his beautiful eyes, he was so frightened. And, you know, he was frightening him. He was about to, in his world, kill.
Yeah.
But my thought was, I hope he doesn't do that to him. But that's not something that people can understand, so I give him the gift of my silence, and that's a gift to myself. I am that, and that, and that, and not, and not, and not. So he did not pull the trigger, as far as I know. And if he did pull the trigger, where is the problem? You know, you wait, it hurts or it doesn't. For all you know, it won't. Let's say he did pull the trigger, you just wait, and then if it doesn't hurt, you just go on. If it does hurt, you notice. And you notice that even pain is a projection of mind. Doesn't matter. Yes, it hurts. Yes, it hurts. Yes, it hurts. That's honest. And yet all pain is a projection of mind, so that ever noticing beauty of just now and not.
You sound completely free.
How would I know? You know, as far as I know, yes. And what do I know? What do I know? You know, when I tell my children, you know, in all truth and humor, you can't have anything. And isn't that a lighthearted thing to be? Or to not have?
Is doing the dishes still your meditation?
Yes, and everything is that.
Yeah.
It's everything is that. It's picking up the trash. It's walking from here to there, even if it's just one step.
Well, one thing that you talked about, which I read, I think it was a transcript, and I thought was very useful, is about how you say no. Because obviously you have to say no sometimes to people, and yet it seems to me an automatic process that you know to say no, or you know to be available and say yes.
Yes.
Is it as simple as that?
Well, it's I only answered one thing, so yes, it is as simple as that. I don't contemplate what do they want me to say. They want me to say yes, or they wouldn't really mind if there's none of that going on. I'm answering to one thing. If someone said, would you like to take a walk? Number one, how would I know? I haven't done the walk. You know, you can't know the future. So I can't answer honestly. And so every reason to or not to do the walk is just a play of mind. So I answer out of this. If it's a yes to me. If I say no, it's a yes to me. So I always win. I'm always a yes to this center that is worthy of integrity.
And this is an alignment with the whole, isn't it?
With the whole.
It's
Yes.
like you, like me, like everything is just a manifestation of the whole.
I owe that. I owe that. I am that.
But to me, they're different words. That I owe that, and I am that. I understand completely, but I owe that implies debt.
Well, it can be heard that way, but it would be like another way of saying it was just being true to oneself. But it's beyond the self.
Okay, so you say it as okay. I understand that. Yeah.
And why not?
How are your children now? Because what I found very moving was in one of the books I read, it had a lot of details about what happened after, let's say, your awakening. And then I think it was Roseanne was saying, your daughter was saying, she didn't recognize you were a completely different person. She found it hard at first.
Yeah, it was very difficult for them.
Because she thought you'd resort to the old because you used to have these primordial screams coming out. It was a rough old time for them.
Yeah, rough old time for them. You know, for people witnessing this discussion, it was an angry mother, a very confused mother, and just teaching my children what wasn't because I, as a believer, believed, the things out of my mouth were really true. And of course, I've come to see that I didn't believe them, that I really tried to believe that I believed them, because it's not possible for me, as far as I know, to see anyone as a believer. And I invite everyone to get still and test that. The mind is continually just always attempting to identify itself as, through believing that identity that they're in the moment. So with my children, it is still difficult. One of them especially still projects very heavily onto me, but he has every right to. Life of the believer. My job is to love. That's the simplest job in the world. It just comes down to that. That meets my nature, the nature of everything, of these flowers and this glass. I mean, we couldn't count the blessings and the grace of this moment, this dream. The work is inquiry, is about waking us up when there's a nightmare. And people say, but Katie, it's still just a dream. And it's, yeah, no dream, no world, no existence. And there isn't existence, but isn't it wonderful we can still dream it?
Yeah, I think if I personalise it to a degree, I would say that, and that's why I asked you about diligence earlier, it's like when things are going badly, then of course one inquires, and it's pretty unintelligent not to inquire. But it's just as important to inquire when things are going well, because that's
amazing.
when you learn even more.
Yes, and it that also can shake one out of denial, and denial is what holds unenlightenment, holds asleepness in place. So inquiry wakes us up to what we already know that we didn't believe we knew. And in that, it can never be possible again, because we have to believe it before we can see it, meaning anything. So it is, for the believer, that's what brought them in, let's say at 3 or 4 years old, or 2 or 6 or 7 years old. The first time a person believes is the moment of birth. It's, as identity. So maybe someone's calling Iain, and certainly not calling you. You're in your own world. And then at maybe some moment you look around and everyone's saying Iain, and then maybe you just, in that moment, you believe that's who you are. And prior to that, no Iain. In that moment, Iain. Mind identified as a something. So we really are, our birth is here, and our death is here, and our joy and our fear and our everything. This is it. This is the creator of all, without exception, in my experience.
Do you still feel an affinity with homeless people? I know at one point you thought you had to go out and spend time with homeless people. Is that still a special relationship?
Well, actually, with people.
With people, yeah.
Yeah. And so, yes, still all people.
Yes.
All people.
I guess all people are homeless in one way until they know who they are.
That really feels right. It really feels right. But just people to be able to walk into their homes and know who they are, or out on the streets with people that your mind may separate yourself from. If you're not attached to what you believe about those people, then there is no separation. And you're at home everywhere, with everyone, in every situation, without exception. And that's home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a quote, I pulled out quotes from some of your books, and there's one here, I just got my finger, I just found actually, there is only one story, the story of the one. And that's what you're saying. It's just, one story, and maybe there's a few tangents and a few different apparent endings, but it's one story.
Yeah, the story of I doesn't go far.
Yeah.
Doesn't accomplish much.
And really, we're all, I say we're all, virtually everybody is somehow so entangled with fear and anxiety. And I think from memory, you actually define fear for not getting what you want. Is that right? Is that how you see the...
Fear is, you can really sum it up with you're afraid you're going to lose what you have. It's threatened, or you're not going to get what you want.
Yes.
And that's because it implies that what we have or don't have, that we need. Let's see, a simpler way of saying it is I have everything I need in every moment, but that's too limited. I have more than I need in every moment, and I have tested that one. And I'm very open to something different, but in almost 30 years, no exception.
Yeah, you see, I think what really happens is we look at it a little bit more, that we're all trying to be happy. That's a very basic, to feel complete, to feel one, and somehow we look to the outside and think, if I can have that, or more of that, or better relationship, whatever, I'm going to be happy, which translates, I'm going to be complete. And of course, on the outside, we're using up all the resources rather quickly, and it has to come back to here. And maybe we get what we want to some degree on the outside, but because it's a natural expression of our connection with the grounded being, rather than us wanting it as separate individuals. And that, for me, it's the thing of, it is fear to some extent, but it's fear of not getting what I want in happiness. I think that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
I guess it's different for everybody in the manifestation.
Well, it's certainly something to contemplate. But I think that speaking to the state of grace that you brought up earlier, in this moment now, it is impossible not to have everything we need. And our mind would lead us to believe differently, but that has nothing to do with the state of grace and reality. It is simply something, the mind, something to identify and question. Other than that, it's a perfect world, and I have really tested that. It is a friendly universe.
Yeah. It's interesting, in the last interview I had, it came up, I mentioned at the end about, I've been very moved recently by some autobiographies I read, a couple of people on death row who they know they're going to die, they're living in pretty awful conditions, they're caged up, and often the jailers are not really nice, not very nice, and they get rubbish food. And yet, unbelievably, or maybe unbelievably is the wrong word, but somehow they find peace in themselves.
It's no decision, no fear. It's that point where they don't have a choice. Their mind gets, oh, there's no way out. The end. So fear is, it happens anytime you project a future, even a nanosecond ahead. So, okay, gonna die, these bars have convinced this mind it's over. So it's over. There is no decision, no fear. When the mind knows it's over, it rests. But no identity to keep alive that it can hold on to.
But they haven't come from negativity. It's somehow the process might originally have come from resignation, but out of that it seems, and I haven't met these people, but it seems there's an expansion there. There's an acceptance, an expansion, and as you say, there's accepting what is now. And it's not even the process, it's not even accepting it, just acceptance is there.
When the mind loses its ability to project, in other words, create the illusion of a future, it loses the ability to project, it's over. That's the end of fear. And in that space, it is huge, because mind is infinite source, and it is free to to meet itself with understanding that is unlimited is so beautiful. So I would hope death row for everyone.
Well, we're all in death row in one way. It's just that it's a funny thing with the human mind that you kind of know you're going to die, but you don't quite believe you're going to die.
You think, well, until then, what can I do to make this better? And
that, in one way, is not a bad attitude to say, and I think you talk about that kind of, the best way to deal with the fear of death is to relive. Because if you relive, there's something positive that comes out of it.
Or be lived, I would say. Just be lived and be lived. And you know, I'm going to move my hand. Okay, I did it. And then do I have to take credit for everything? And without the story, sometimes just amazing. No I.
So we have to finish this part in about 5 minutes. Then we're going to have another short part where my colleague Eleanor Gilbert is going to actually run through some questions with you of some issues in her life. And so let's just end this with just talking briefly about your 4 questions. You want to run through the 4 questions and how you see those?
Well, for example, using that statement, something terrible is going to happen. And the first question, is it true? The second question, can you absolutely know that it's true? That something terrible is going to happen?
So whatever thought somebody has, they can apply the first 2 questions. They're very obvious, very simply.
Yes, the work is a way to identify and then to question the thoughts that are the cause of all the suffering and confusion in the world. So there are only 4 of them. So the first one is it true? The second one, can you absolutely know that it's true? In this case, the concept we've identified is something terrible is going to happen. The third question, notice how you react and what happens when you believe that thought. So this is where all your emotions have the opportunity to be noticed and contemplated and witnessed, how you react when you believe that thought. And then all the actions that are born out of that and how the mind works. How do you react? What happens when you think that thought? So all 4 of these are questions to meditate on. Okay, 4th question, who or what would you be without the thought? And then I invite people to turn it around. Something terrible is going to happen. The opposite, something wonderful is going to happen. Well, it's not enough. So in that situation that you're considering, what is wonderful? And begin to identify something wonderful is going to happen. So you consider other options. And that's that quantum healing that you were speaking to before the interview. And it's all over the place in this inquiry when you find these opposites, turn the concept around and contemplate what is as true or truer.
And what you need to be, especially with the 3rd question, is completely honest with yourself, don't you?
And still.
And you have to look in the nooks and crannies to see what's there.
Yes, and actually you don't even have to look, just listen. And it will, it will, that question and what it will enlighten you. That's how it works. So really, the work is nothing. It's like a portal in, and then you just listen. Something terrible is going to happen. Is it true? Listen, be shown, and that power, that I know mind, does not have an avenue to. That mind will enlighten you. So it's ask and wait. Be still.
Ask and wait and be still.
And know.
And know.
Yeah, be known.
Yeah. Do you spend much time each day being still?
Always still.
Yeah, you're always still.
Always still.
So now you're still.
Now I'm still. Immovably so.
So you're rooted in stillness.
Everyone is.
But gets covered up and they forget or they don't know.
The believers, that's the life of a believer.
Yeah.
It's an illusion.
Well, that is a wonderful place to end with the thought or the knowledge, or even better than knowing, that everybody is rooted in stillness. So Byron Katie, thank you very much.
Thank you, Iain. Wonderful to sit with you.
I enjoyed our conversation, our meeting.
I did as well.
And if viewers want to stay for another 10-15 minutes, there'll be a separate little exercise with Eleanor now, just showing a practical example of the 4 questions of the work. I'll just show again a couple of Byron Katie's books, although there's many. If you look on the internet, you'll find many, but there's a couple. So thank you for watching Conscious TV, and I hope we see you again soon. Goodbye.
Hello and welcome back to Conscious TV. My name is Eleanor Gilbert and I'm having the studio with me Byron Katie, and I'm really excited about doing actually an experiment or really an experience rather of the work that you do worldwide. And there is an issue that I would love to explore with you. So this is a great opportunity to do so, I think. Okay, so there are certain situations whereby I feel that the deep belief that I have, even though on the one hand I know that it's absolutely not true, on the other hand there is this thought that pops sometimes in my mind where I'm not lovable. And that really hurts, because I know it's not true, and yet there are certain situations where that, like, oof, and I lose who I know myself to be.
You're believing,
I believe
you're believing
the
that you're
thought.
unlovable.
Yes.
In that specific situation.
Reinforces that.
So, you know, for me, those times are so precious, because I can say on one hand, I know that I'm lovable, you know, I know it's not true, but life shows us what we believe and what we don't believe. So, you know, it's a confrontation with denial. So if I'm, let's say, experiencing your situation and I'm feeling unlovable, that shows me that what is really true is I believe I'm unlovable.
Yeah.
And I'm
here is the
saying one
evidence.
thing to people, and the truth is, I don't feel lovable. Okay, so that's what's such good news about that. I've just been enlightened to what I believe and what I don't believe. So now that we've identified it, we can get very still with this and contemplate on, you know, where is it that I'm not awake to this yet?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So, or where is it that I'm not enlightened yet? Where am I still asleep?
Yes.
Okay, so in that situation, in that specific situation, and I invite you viewers to find a situation of your own. So in that situation, you're not lovable. That person is seeing you as unlovable.
Or is acting as if.
So you are unlovable.
Right.
Yeah, that's what you are believing.
Yes.
You are unlovable. So in that situation, is it true?
In that situation. Well,
Now,
it certainly feels true in that situation.
In inquiry,
Yes.
you know, I talk about the old paradigm where people used logic and conversation.
Right.
And we still had war on the planet, like the dinosaur age. War with the self, war with the world. So then there's a new age, like inquiry, that can take us into a whole other paradigm.
Yeah.
So the answer to the first 2 questions, there are only 4, the answer to the first 2 questions, you contemplate until you are shown the answer, which is 1 syllable, yes or no.
Right.
So if it's any answer other than yes or no is the old way,
Right.
where we had conversations. And so try just yes or no.
Okay.
And notice how the mind will go crazy. It wants to go, yeah, but, well, I know that, you know, it'll dance. And then just notice be very gentle, then just drop into stillness and be shown. So in that situation, and if you're at home, I invite you to close your eyes, and in that situation that you were experiencing, you're not lovable.
Mm-hmm.
Is that true? And remember, it's just one syllable, yes or no. And this isn't a trick question. Whatever it is for you, just drop under that and be shown, be still, wait.
Am I unlovable? No.
So the answer no, that authentic answer, if it's yours, and some of you are answering yes, that's okay, and you would go to the second question, can you absolutely know that it's true? And we'll skip that because your no will take us to question 3.
Okay.
And these questions are always free on thework.com. Always free, never have to pay for it, it's there. So, third question, notice how you react when you believe that thought in that situation. Notice what happens. So this gives you the opportunity to get in touch with your feelings, your emotions, and any embarrassment or anything, your shoulders or your facial expressions may. So just go back and notice. How did you react in that situation when you believed that thought?
It feels devastating. It's as if I diminish, shrink. It feels extremely young. But mostly it's a pain, like a stab in the heart. It really feels devastating. It's almost like the end of the world. It feels that strongly.
Yes. So now just kind of flow into this fourth question. In that situation, notice who you would be without the thought. I'm unlovable.
Who would I be without the thought?
Notice the difference.
The first thing that comes to mind is like I would have no excuses, like no more excuses. What does that mean? No more excuses to be small, no more excuses to fall into that small space, no more excuse to blame. To blame, yeah. To blame other, whatever that is, whoever that is. Yeah.
So now let's move to the turnarounds. So you are unlovable. What is the opposite of that?
Lovable.
So you are lovable. In that situation, give me an example of where you're lovable.
Of where I am lovable.
Where you were actually lovable in that situation at that time. So what I love about inquiry is it gives us the opportunity to go back and witness what the thought we were believing, the concept we were believing, the assumption we were experiencing ourselves as, that identity, to see what was in that space. So to go back, take another look, I am lovable. So witness that situation and give me an example of where, in fact, you were lovable.
Where I was lovable. In my kindness, in my generosity, in my helpfulness, in my presence, in my company, in just being.
And I have one, would you like to hear it?
Yes.
In your innocence of believing in the face of the real and authentic, how you could see yourself as anything other than that.
Yeah.
That innocence that would believe the unreal that's really going on.
Yeah.
In the face of all the proof, that innocence of believing what would oppose it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. We're also innocent.
I forget about that.
Well, and this really puts light on it, because you really were innocently believing you were unlovable in the face of that person you just described through the examples of I am lovable. So you, in that situation, you were unlovable. Is it true?
No. No.
No.
No.
So now, when you think back to that situation or that person you were with,
Yes.
it's entirely changed. And an
Yes.
appreciation and a compassion for oneself and a reality of who and what you really are takes over, because you have been enlightened to yourself, to that situation, to that other person, rather than asleep in it.
Yes. Yes. I think the key for me was to really see who would I be without that belief. And the attachment to blame as well. That was quite key for me to see that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us, and thank you very much for watching Conscious TV. Goodbye.